Fall 1974, Fort Leavenworth Old Barracks, second floor by the Rookery. I was a 19-year-old private on night duty when the hallway went ice cold. Doors started banging one by one, and that burnt plastic stink rolled in. Then she slid out of the dark, the lady in black, hands clasped, face white as paper. Radio screamed, bed shook, names we didn't know spilled from nowhere. We held our ground, and the lights blew. Next thing, blackout. You want the truth about what walked that hall? Listen close. So before we continue, please make sure to like and subscribe to support the channel, and comment down below where you're watching from. Thanks. I got to Fort Leavenworth in early fall 1974. Kansas smelled like wet hay and hot dust. The post sat on a bend of the Missouri like an old dog that wouldn't die. Stone walls, iron grates, history that pressed on your shoulders. People talk about the schoolhouse there, the maps and war plans. What I felt was the prison, the stockade, the old cells with thick doors. You could almost hear the hinges breathe when the wind came up from the river. They threw me into a long, two-story barracks that creaked even when no one moved. Wood floors scarred by boots, wax that never took, doors with paint so old it had ripples like a bad lake. The windows rattled any time a truck went by. Pipes ticked and clanged. Half the lights hummed. The rest just died and got ignored. I was Private First Class Raymond Holt, 19, Indiana farm boy with skinny wrists and a haircut that hurt my ears. I still stood at parade rest when nobody asked. Yes, Sergeant. No, Sergeant. Top told me to use my head, and I tried. First month I slept with my boots under my pillow so I wouldn't lose them. I thought that was smart. The older guys laughed. Said the barracks ate boots, ate socks, ate men. Okay, I thought. Funny. Army jokes. We woke up before the sun most days. Formations looked like 100 shadows in the mist, people coughing, shifting, fidgeting because Kansas cold goes right through you. The drill wasn't hard, just endless. Run till your knees bark, push till your elbows grind, march till your feet stop being feet. You forget your first name and learn to answer to your last. Breakfast in the chow hall was the same plate every day. Eggs that folded like rubber, toast that shattered, bacon if you got lucky, coffee strong enough to clean parts. Sometimes we'd eat fast and sit outside, steam coming off our heads, watching the slow parade of trucks lifting dust as they rumbled past. Beyond the parade field, the old red brick buildings huddled together like they were keeping a secret. I bunked in a long bay on the second floor. Rows of bunks, green blankets folded square. My locker smelled like oil and metal and the stink of 1,000 socks that died before me. It was loud most nights. Laughter. Cards. Radios turned low on stations that faded in and out when the weather shifted. Guys telling stories about anywhere else. Anything to not hear the pipes, the wind, the building talking like it was alive. Two men became my gravity. Specialist Joe Martinez was 24. He'd been to Vietnam and back, and the war had grabbed a piece of him and kept it. He smoked like it was breathing. Always had a cigarette burned down to a crooked ash that somehow did not fall. Dark eyes that didn't blink much. He was the kind that called sergeants top like it was a dare. He laughed quiet, if he laughed. He fixed things with tape and profanity, and they stayed fixed. Corporal Dennis Whitaker was 26, local boy from somewhere outside Topeka. He kept everything squared away. If a sergeant needed someone to do it right, Whitaker's name came up. He wasn't loud. He didn't threaten. He just had this steady way of standing near you that made you do the right thing so you wouldn't feel like a fool. He had a wife in town and a quiet handshake that made you think of clean rooms and good furniture. He called everyone kid, even Martinez. We let him. Days cycled. Morning drills. Work detail. Class. Chow, more drills. Nights were for the smoke pit behind our building. The pit was just a busted ring of cinder blocks with sand in the middle and butts packed thick like gravel. Guys wrapped in field jackets, talking trash, swapping lies, arguing about sports like any of us could afford a ticket to anything. The sky over Leavenworth at night looked low, flattened by the river. The prison lights kept a kind of gleam on everything, like we were all being watched. On weekends we played cards. Martinez ran the table. "You boys are not learning," he'd say, and clear our money with a smile that didn't open his mouth. Whitaker didn't play often. When he did, he never won big, never lost big. He liked to sit where he could see the door. I noticed that, even if I didn't say it then. Sometimes older NCOs came by and told base legends. Tornadoes that could twist a truck 6 inches off its wheels without moving it. MPs who heard singing in the admin building when everyone went home. A cell block door that never stayed shut no matter how many chains they put on it. We grinned and nodded. We were soldiers, scared of nothing, on paper. There was one story people mentioned and then moved on fast, like the words had nails in them. The lady in black. I heard about her in the chow line the first week. Some man with worn stripes on his sleeve and a voice like gravel leaned close to his buddy and said, "Don't walk by the rookery after midnight." Then saw me listening and shut up. I laughed to myself. A ghost in an army base. Sure. And Santa would pull staff duty at Christmas. After chow, Whitaker pointed across the parade field. "See that cluster of old houses?" he asked me. I nodded. "That's the rookery. Oldest building on post, they say. Some quarters there look at you when you pass. Don't stare long." He said it like a man telling you the road floods in spring. A simple fact. Nothing to argue about. I slept fine those first weeks, if you could call it sleep. Kansas wind found every crack. The building sighed. Doors clicked in their frames like someone's finger on the trigger. Water in the pipes moaned. I told myself it was just an old place doing old place things. I closed my eyes. I thought about home. Cornfields. A porch that didn't move under your feet. My mother, who wrote letters on paper so careful it felt like a prayer. We drilled. We cleaned. We learned. And when we were done, we went back to the smoke pit. And when the smoke was done, we went to bed. And after lights out, the barracks became something else. Not bad. Not good. Just awake. And paying attention to us. Back then, the Cold War lay on everything like a heavy coat. There were posters in the schoolhouse about the Soviets and their tanks. Lectures about doctrine and missiles and the bright kind of fire nobody survives. We were soldiers in a strange quiet. We trained for a war that might never come. Some men drank. Some ran until their legs shook. Some got mean for no reason and apologized 2 days later. Me, I just tried to keep my head down and my gear clean. All that's to say, life made sense. Work, eat, sleep, repeat. You could fit your spirit in the corners of those days. I thought I understood the place. I thought the walls were walls and the doors were doors. I was wrong. The base was older than us. It had its own kind of memory. It remembered things we'd never been told. Little stuff started first. Crap you could shrug off. Doors that eased open at 2 in the morning when there wasn't a draft. We'd get up, slam them shut, and they'd click back open soon as your head hit the pillow. The night fire watch would swear he locked the far wing. Next lap through, propped again, just enough to see a thin stripe of dark in a darker hall. Hall bulbs flickered and buzzed like horseflies. You'd look up to cuss the electrician and the light would steady, like it knew you were watching. You'd walk away. It would start again. One night the lights went down the whole corridor. Not off, just lower. Like someone bent the dimmer with 2 fingers. The floors got cold underfoot, colder than the air, like winter melted up through the beams. I heard 2 sergeants near the motor pool talking in that half-mock, half-serious way soldiers use when they don't want to own a thought. "Do not take the cut by the rookery after midnight," one said. "Go the long way." The other laughed. The first didn't. I walked past them with a wrench I didn't need. "You hear me, Private?" the serious one said. "Yeah, Sergeant," I said. I laughed later when I told Martinez. He blew smoke out his nose and grinned. "Old men need their ghosts," he said. "Makes them feel like they know something we don't." He didn't laugh long. One evening, Martinez and I were on CQ, which meant we got to babysit the desk, answer the phone, and make rounds, while everyone else slept or pretended to. The building stretched quiet and thin at midnight. Even the pipes shut up. You could hear the river if the wind was right. It's funny what quiet does. Makes your skin feel new and wrong. Memos stacked in the in tray. The radio on the desk muttered dead air. The red duty logbook sat open, big and blank, waiting for lies to be written in neat block letters. I was new, so I was trying to be neat. Martinez had his boots up on a chair, cigarette burning. "Kid," he said, "you ever get the feeling this whole place is like the inside of a church, but not the nice part?" I said no. I kept writing. We took a round near 1 in the morning. Empty wing on the second floor. Nobody assigned down there because of some slow-rolling renovation that never seemed to roll. Doors shut. Locks shiny like they were new yesterday. The floor felt colder than the rest of the building. A breath leaked through that hall even with every window shut. Sounds different too. Your boot heel echoed twice. Like someone behind you stepped when you did. We went door to door. Tried a couple handles. Firm. Martinez shrugged. We started back. That's when we heard the footsteps. Not ours. Not the building. Slow. Steady. Coming from the far end where the light fell off into a heavier dark. I looked at Joe. He flicked his ash. Probably a rat the size of my boot, he said. But he didn't smile. We walked toward the sound. It walked toward us. Then it stopped. I shined the flashlight and the beam cut down to the end and came back with nothing in it. We turned to go. Then a smell came up the hall like a wave that didn't care what you were. It was burnt plastic and rotten chow mixed together. It hit the back of my throat and got stuck there. I gagged. Joe froze. He looked like he knew that smell. He stood silent while my body tried to spit the air out. It lasted 5 heartbeats. Then it thinned and went away like someone opened a window we couldn't see. "Hell is that?" I asked. Joe shook his head slow. "Smelled something like it once," he said. "Rotor gone to slag. And a body cooked too long in it." He didn't say where. He didn't have to. After that, when the house settled or the wind hit a seam and whistled, I didn't roll my eyes right away. I kept my chuckle small. The base had edges that took your laughter and kept it. A few days later, we took flowers to the base cemetery. It was Whitaker's idea. "You boys should know where you are," he said. We rode in a truck that rattled like a bad lung. The cemetery was green and quiet in a way the barracks never were. Headstones stood like people at attention. Civil War, Indian Wars, Spain, First World War, Second, Korea, a few new ones. I knelt and read names, some from before my granddad. The wind slid down the hill, soft and constant. "All in one place," Whitaker said. "All the wars stacked together. This post keeps the stack. That's its job, training and remembering." He put his cap back on. "And sometimes the remembering leaks." I laughed then, a little. We always laughed, but it didn't wipe the cold off my neck. A week after the cemetery, Martinez and I had CQ again. The building had that listening feel. You get it after midnight when everything else on post goes dull. Even the MPs talk quieter on the radio. Like you're supposed to whisper so you don't wake a thing you don't have a name for. It was after 1 when we heard it. Footsteps overhead, not heavy, not fast. Someone taking a walk who wasn't supposed to. The wing above us was empty. We both knew it. I grabbed the flashlight. Joe grabbed nothing. He just stood and rolled his neck like he was getting ready to see something he'd rather not. The steps crossed back and forth, right over our heads. 5 paces one way, 5 back, then stop, then stop, then 5 more. The kind of rhythm that means someone is thinking hard or standing guard or going crazy. We took the stairs. The second floor felt like a cooler someone had left open. A line of cold ran down the hall behind the doors. "Hello?" I said, which was stupid because who would answer? We walked toward the sound. It stopped when we hit the middle stretch. I pointed the light. Dust. Door handles with a dull shine. Old bulletin board with staples like teeth. No people. "Probably some dumbass from HHC hiding up here to drink," Joe said. He tried one door. Locked. Tried another. Locked. He knocked on the third. Nothing. We stood there in a quiet that had corners. Then something moved at the edge of the light. Not a person, not the floor. Like a shadow changed its mind. Just a flicker in the air where there wasn't anything to throw it. I swept the beam. The beam came back clean. "You see that?" I asked. Joe said nothing. He was sniffing the air. "Not that smell again," he said, almost to himself. His face went tight. A second later, the stink rolled over us. A soft, hot wave you'd think a fire makes when it takes a breath. Burned plastic, spoiled stew. It tugged at my guts. We backed off. It went away. The flashlight flickered and steadied. The hall bulb hummed once like a fly stuck in a web, and then it was just a bulb again. We finished the round and wrote, checked second floor secure in the log like good little soldiers. I kept my hand from shaking so the letters looked right. Whitaker came in at 2 because he was the kind of corporal who checked on his privates even when he didn't have to. We told him. He listened with his arms crossed and his head tilted like he'd put the story on his shelf to see if it rolled. Then he said, "Do not joke about this base. We ain't joking, Corporal," Joe said. "I didn't say you were." Whitaker looked at the ceiling like he could see the footsteps through wood. "This place is older than any of us. It remembers things. It can put those things in front of you if it wants. Don't give it reasons." "What kind of reasons?" I asked. He didn't answer. He rubbed his thumb and forefinger together like he was grinding something small. "Lock the doors you can. Mark the ones you can't. Stay out of the empty wing after midnight without 2 bodies with you." That's not an order. It's a suggestion from a man who likes sleeping through the night. He went back out into the dark like he always did, boots steady, head up. We pretended the whole thing could be pinned on some air in the lines or another duty guy trying to screw with us. You could hang the night on a nail like that and walk away. It stayed there, fine, until the next week when it slid off and hit the floor. It built up quiet. Your room is your world in the Army. It was mine, anyway. My bunk, my footlocker, the little shelf for letters and a photo stuck under the frame. That space changed first. One night we came back from the smoke pit and found our deck of cards scattered. We never left cards out. Martinez kept them in a little tin with a rubber band. He was particular about it, like how some guys are about their boots. The cards were all over the floor, some face up, some face down, like a hand exploded mid-deal. The tin lay on its side. The rubber band was snapped like it had been chewed. "Wind," I said. It was stupid the second it came out of my mouth. The windows were shut. The fan wasn't on. Nothing else moved. "Yeah," Joe said, dry. "Hurricane Kansas." We picked them up, we laughed, small. We agreed some dumbass had done it and we'd catch him next time. I put the tin in my locker. I shut the locker. When I came back from the latrine 5 minutes later, the tin sat on my pillow. I looked at Joe. He lifted both hands like he was telling a cop he had nothing. We sat there a long minute like 2 men who had heard a dog talk and didn't want to tell anyone. The whispers started after that. Not voices, not at first. You ever hear a radio down the hall at 3 in the morning? That bleat of sound where you can't make out the words, just the shape of a person talking? It was like that. Under the floorboards, in the corners. Some nights the whispers bled right into your head. I'd sit up with my heart thumping and think a guy was right behind my locker, enemies listing my name. When I craned back to listen, it faded, like someone stepping away into a long room. Then one night the whisper cut through the mush. It came like a breath in my ear, 2 words. "Get out." I froze. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I told myself it was a dream. I stared at the ceiling and the words sat there like frost on the air. I could not make my lungs work right. When I finally sucked air, the cold went away. I lay there until reveille like a man in a grave waiting for somebody to decide where to dig. In the morning I didn't tell anyone, because that's the Army way. You share complaints about the chow. You keep the things that make you small to yourself. At lunch, Martinez looked at me and said, plain, "You look like gear that got wet and dried wrong." I told him what I heard. He nodded like he'd been expecting that. "I dreamed," he said. He said it with a slow voice, like it weighed something. Woke up with the sheets wet like I spilled a canteen. No canteen. She was there. "Who?" I asked, though I already knew which she he meant. "There's only one she in a Barracks legend. A woman," he said. "Black dress. Like in those old pictures. Stood at the end of my bunk making these little sounds like she was trying not to cry but couldn't help it." He looked at his hands. When I sat up, the dream snapped, but the sheet was damp. Like someone had leaned over me with wet hair. He ground out his cigarette like it was a bug. "I don't drink before bed anymore, kid. Don't need a dream like that twice." Other guys had their stories too. A cook from Delta Company said he heard marching in our hall at 3 a.m. Not footsteps. Marching. Columns. Left, right, all the way past the latrine and down the stairs and gone. He opened his door and saw no one, but he still saluted because you do that when you hear that kind of rhythm. Another private transferred bunks said he didn't like the pressure in that end room. Pressure, like the air had weight. He took the top rack in a different bay and slept with his knife under the pillow. He wouldn't say why. By mid-October, men were swapping racks like kids trade baseball cards. Nobody wanted the last 3 doors on the long wall. I ended up 1 door short of the bad hallway, not because I wanted to be there. Because Whitaker ran the list with a pen and a face that said the Army isn't a buffet. I didn't argue. I didn't want him looking at me like a dad looks when a kid tells him the closet is dangerous. The place got thick. That's the word. Thick. Like sound had to push to get through. Guys talked closer. Radios clicked and sputtered and cut off, and you'd swear you heard a woman's voice cut between 2 stations for a second. Showers went ice cold for no reason. Door handles were either hot to the touch or slick like they'd been in a freezer. Someone said it was a problem with the old boiler and we all nodded, because we wanted that sentence to be true. We argued about it after lights out, me and Joe and Whitaker. Sleep, Whitaker said, like a man giving medicine. Do your job, don't feed it. He didn't say what it was. He didn't joke. Martinez said, you can call it whatever you want. Something in this place is trying to get our attention. It's got mine. Not sure it should. I try to think like a man with sense. Maybe it's stress. Maybe we're hearing things. Whitaker looked at me with tired eyes. Holt, people hear things. That's fine, but keys don't move themselves. He wasn't wrong. I'd woken from a nap to find my keyring hanging from a nail in the far wall. I never put it there. I didn't even know there was a nail there. The ring swung slow, like it had just been placed. When I asked around about the lady in black like a fool, locals in town shut up faster than NCOs. A woman at the PX said we didn't need to talk about that if we wanted to sleep. You from out of state? She asked. Yes, ma'am, I said. Then be polite to the houses and don't walk under those old trees by the rookery at night. That was it. She rang up my soap and cigarettes and didn't look at me again. I could have lived with whispers in cold halls. I could have chalked up damp sheets to a busted pipe. But what showed up next pushed us out of easy denial and onto a little patch of ground where your mouth gets dry and you start saying dumb words. We decided to go to the hallway and sit. That was Whitaker's idea, which might surprise you. He had that steady way, but steady doesn't mean blind. If it's a person screwing around, we catch the person, he said. If it's the building, we'll see what the building wants. He said it like checking a fuse box. Practical. Calm. I didn't feel calm. Friday night. Payday. Most of the guys were at the club or down in town trying to find trouble they could survive. We stayed. We grabbed camp chairs from a supply closet and posted up halfway down the empty wing. 2 radios. One on my belt, one on Whitaker's. We sat in a murky yellow wash of the old bulbs and listened to the building breathe. Martinez lit a cigarette and then crushed it at Whitaker's look. Sorry, Corporal, he muttered, ashing into his palm before he could think. We sat with our backs to the wall. The floor was clean because nobody walked here much. Dust lay in the corners like the building was shedding skin. Right before midnight, the air leaned colder. The upper light in the stairwell flickered twice and went steady. My breath didn't fog, but my skin said it should. Something like a weight pushed low and even on my chest. Not much, just enough to notice. The footsteps started far. Not the wandering kind we'd heard before. These were measured, coming toward us. I put my head sideways, trying to get the direction right. I didn't have to. The sound ran out of the dark like a file of boots from a drill pad. Tap, 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 tap. Each step perfectly matched to the next, like a metronome that didn't give a damn about our hearts. Hold, Whitaker said gently, like we were patrolling in a training lane and he didn't want us to spook a lane walker. Let it get to us. I tried not to swallow loud. The temp slipped another notch. My fingers felt stupid and slow. The bulbs along the hall hummed louder. Then the shadows at the far end thickened. I squinted like that would help. It did. She stepped into the light without stepping. She just arrived at the edge of where the bulb touched the hall. She wore black, not toy black, heavy black, a long dress like the ones in daguerreotypes they keep in museum cases. Her hair was pulled back so tight it made my scalp ache. Her face was white, not pale like a sick person, but white like paper that had never seen dirt. She held her hands at her waist like somebody taught her there was one way to stand, and this was it, even after everything. She did not walk. The best I can tell you is she slid forward without moving, like the floor tilted and something slow brought her closer. The dress hem never brushed the boards. It hung an inch above them like she had made a deal with the ground. Martinez made a sound that was almost a laugh and almost a sob. "That's her," he whispered. From the dream. I couldn't look at him. I couldn't look away from her. It felt rude not to meet her eyes. It felt dangerous to meet her eyes. She came down that hall and the lights ticked like insects in a jar. The radios at our belts popped and cracked alive, not with a voice, but with that roar a radio makes when you turn the volume without a channel, white noise that isn't white at all. It got loud, then louder. She kept coming. When she was 5 paces away, the stink rolled over us. Burnt plastic in a mess hall, spoiled fruit on a cook stove. Under it, something sweet like old flowers left too long in water. I gagged hard enough my eyes watered. She didn't notice. Or she did and didn't care. "Ma'am," Whitaker said, which was the strangest thing I heard all night. He said it soft, polite, like he'd say it to a colonel's wife who got lost on post. "Ma'am, we are soldiers here. We mean no disrespect." That was when her head turned toward him. Not the slow turn of a woman, the flat, exact turn of a mannequin. Her eyes, if I can say eyes, were dark pieces of glass, not empty, not full, just set there by a careful hand. She kept her hands folded like she was praying but forgot the words. She was close enough that I felt something cold touch my forearm. It wasn't air. It had fingers. I swear to you, it had fingers. The pad of a thumb, the edge of a hand. Light as a moth landing. So cold my skin burned. I flinched. I didn't mean to. Whitaker's hand snapped. He barely moved, but I saw it, like he wanted to slap my shoulder to keep me from running, and then stopped himself. She passed us slow. The radio screamed and then went quiet. She stopped at a door halfway down the hall. We had checked that door a dozen times in a dozen rounds. Locked, always. She faced it a long moment, head bent like a woman in a church who knows the prayer but can't get it out. Then she thinned. That's the word that comes back. She thinned like the light pulled her apart. And then she wasn't there. We didn't talk for breath after that. Whitaker stood. He walked to the door like he had drill sergeants watching him. He put his hand on the knob and it turned. It shouldn't have turned. He pushed. The door swung in. The room was empty. No furniture. No dust even. The window was shut. The air was so cold it bit the inside of my nose. We shined the light around and saw nothing but old paint and lines on the floor where a bed used to sit. Nothing moved. Nothing waited. Martinez tapped the wall with his knuckles like a man who's not sure the wall will knock back. It didn't. Whitaker closed the door. He turned the lock. He marked it with a piece of tape from his pocket. "We're done," he said. It was not a question. We picked up the chairs and walked away at an even pace like we were on parade. My legs wanted to run. I did not run. I was proud of that. Back in the bay, we sat, all 3 of us, with our hands open on our knees. Nobody said shit for a long time. Then Whitaker said, "If any of you wants to go talk to the chaplain tomorrow, I will sign the pass and meet you there." He looked straight at Martinez when he said it. Joe stared at the table like he could make it burn with his eyes. "I ain't scared," he said. "It came out like a lie you tell, because you like the shape of it." After that night, I knew there wasn't going to be a tidy box for any of this. You couldn't chalk it up to a trick or a dream. I started spending my off hours in the base library. Old post maps. Histories typed by officers who wanted to get promoted. Local lore in stapled pamphlets that smelled like mold. The librarians knew my face by the second week. I asked dumb questions and they didn't laugh. One old civilian lady who had worked there since Christ was a corporal said, "We have accounts." Then she looked past me at nothing and added, "Not all of them are written down." I pieced what I could. In the 1860s, there had been a woman. I could not get her name. Some say she'd married a soldier who never came back from a patrol. Some said she'd been accused of passing messages, a spy, a widow, a liar, a grieving girl. Stories fought with each other, and I was just some private who didn't know which liar to believe. What I kept bumping into was a line about a hanging near the grounds, not in the prison, but not far. A woman in black. People whispered that she never made peace about where her man went. She still looked. She asked the wrong men the wrong questions. They made an example of her. I brought that back to the barracks like a rat with a shiny thing. Martinez took the pages and didn't read them. He was drinking more, not plastered, not out of control. Just a bottle near his bunk most nights and a glass that never stayed full. "Don't feed the story, kid," he told me. "It already eats fine." He refused night duty. He traded shifts like a man dodging rain that never ends. He fought with Top once. Not loud, hard, staring. Top stared back. In the end, they looked like two men who knew wind when they felt it. The schedule changed, and nobody wrote why. Whitaker tried to keep us moving, like all this was an extra weight in the ruck that you ignore because the march is long. He ran us. He got us to chow on time. He checked bunks with a ruler and made me remake mine when the blanket edge stuck out a half-inch. He was with us more, and he was not with us in this other way. I caught him looking over his shoulder in the latrine mirror like a man who knows someone steps right when he steps right. He stopped going down the long hallway, unless he had to. He slept with the radio on the pillow next to his ear. Other soldiers broke in ways that you could pass off as ordinary if you wanted to. A kid from Oklahoma had a panic attack in the shower at 1 in the morning and didn't come out till the MPs knocked in the door and hauled him by the elbow to the dispensary. He swore the lady was standing on the other side of the curtain making little crying noises like a hurt dog. His hands shook all the next day. He got orders to go to another unit the week after that. No reason given. The smells came and went. Sometimes it was only the sugar rot of flowers left in a hot room. Sometimes it was the puke of bad chow and burned gear layered together. The second smell always came with cold. You could feel through your jacket. On a Tuesday, the fire alarm in our building went off 3 times in one night. No smoke. Panels clear. The senior MP scribbled on his clipboard and said the wiring in these old places was trash and we had to live with it. He looked up the stairs toward the empty wing while he said that, and his mouth made a tight line like he was saying something to the building with his eyes. I kept asking myself ugly questions. What made me special? What made any of us? Why that hall? Why here? Why now? Why me? It was easier to pretend the base aimed the weird at me because I was new. It wasn't true. Guys who'd lived there long named the same smells, the same footsteps, the same strange stillness at 3 a.m. I think we were just inches from the skin of something. Some nights, the skin thinned. I read more. I found a part of an old paper about a widow who watched the road for her husband until the winter took her. Not the same woman, I was pretty sure, but there was a pattern in the words. Women waiting in black, men marching who never came home. The base was a place where men marched and didn't come home. This was their street. Martinez stopped coming to the smoke pit. He sat in his bunk after chow, eyes on the far wall. He'd snap awake sometimes like a man who fell asleep smoking. "You good?" I'd ask. "I'm fine," he'd say. "I just don't like the night." I heard him talk in his sleep, not words, but a tone like a man pleading into a phone no one is on. Whitaker pulled me aside near the motor pool and told me to stash the library crap. "You're carrying a story in your pocket. It's making you heavier to carry," he said. I started to argue. He lifted a hand. "I'm not saying stop. I'm saying don't feed it so much. Keep your feet here." "Yes, Corporal," I said, because I needed someone to give me simple orders, and he was the only one who could. The barracks kept breathing. A private on the first floor said there were hands under his mattress at 2 a.m. Lifting him slow, he swore he felt fingers. How many, he couldn't say. Another guy across the hall said the mirror by the sinks fogged when nobody showered and someone wrote 3 letters on it, D-E-N. He wiped them away. A moment later, they came back. He slept at a friend's. The next night, nothing happened, and he felt like a fool, and that somehow made it worse. I went back to the cemetery one afternoon by myself. The wind talked more there, even when the trees were still. I walked headstones. I said names out loud like a man rehearsing for a roll call. I don't know why. It felt right to do it, like maybe the lady wanted someone to say they were still counted. I left a flower on a marker for a woman I did not know. I thought maybe I was leaving it for her. When I came back, Whitaker was sitting on my bunk. He lifted an eyebrow at the flower receipt sticking from my jacket pocket. "All right," he said. "You're trying. Good. Now we're going to get through this without doing something stupid." "What's stupid?" I asked. "Trying to make a deal with something that doesn't do deals," he said. He looked tired around the eyes and wore the face he wore when he briefed the platoon on a long, wet field problem. Resigned, but steady. "What does it want?" I asked him. "If I knew that, I'd make staff sergeant by morning," he said. He stood. "Be smart. That's all we can do." It felt like the building heard that. Maybe it didn't like smart. Storms in Kansas don't bother with hello. They arrive. Wind climbed the walls that night like it meant to tear the building's nails out. The river threw its sound against the banks, and we could hear that somehow, even over the roof creaking. Lightning made the dorm windows flash like a cheap camera at a dance. The power died once at 9 and came back. Died again at 10 and stayed off in our wing. The lights across the parade field still glowed. We went to bed early just to get somewhere the dark couldn't catch us in the hall. I fell hard into that half-sleep soldiers know, the one that lets every sound in. I woke when the building exhaled. That's the only way I can put it. Something moved through the walls. A push of air that made the hair on my arms wake up and salute. I heard Whitaker's radio click at the far end of the bay. Martinez muttered a curse in Spanish under his breath and then shut up. Then the marching began. I have heard marching every day since I signed the paper. I know the way it sits in your ribs. This was not people walking. This was the past. Boots struck the hall outside like a company moving fast in hard weather. The pattern was perfect. No offbeats, no tired feet. Like the floor became a drum and the drum wanted to say one thing only: we are coming. Doors down the hall slammed open one by one. Not like wind caught them, not like loose hinges, like hands took the knobs and flung them wide. Bang. Coming closer. I sat up. My mouth dried. I looked at Martinez. He was already sitting, eyes wide, palms on the mattress. Whitaker was off his bunk, boots on, radio in his hand like we were hit by incoming. Lightning flashed across the bay, and for a second the faces around us were there and gone, white and flat, eyes open and afraid. "Stay put," Whitaker said. The doors slammed into our bay. The far door blew open so hard the hinge barked. Wind hauled in. It smelled like rain, and something else I don't want to describe again. She stood framed there, the lady in black. Dress hanging wrong in the wind, not moving the way the air moved. Her hair didn't stir. The storm bent around her like she stood under a dry bell. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. Then the radio in Whitaker's hand screamed. I mean screamed. The howl of a station ripping itself inside out. Over it, a whisper threaded, quiet and wrong. Names. Not ours. Names none of us knew. A rapid list, breathy, choked, like each one hurt to pull out. Whitaker took one step forward like a man who leads even when he is afraid. "Ma'am," he said again, because that is who he was. "What do you need?" The radio sparked. Blue jumped from the antenna to his wrist. He staggered. He did not drop it. Martinez stood up and yelled, too loud. "Leave us alone," he said. "We didn't do anything." His voice sounded thin and mean in my own ears. The light bulbs along the ceiling popped one after another like someone shooting them. Glass rained. A chunk hit my cheek and stung. The bed shook at the bolts. Not like a little earth tremor, like someone big put hands on each frame and tried to tear it up. My bunk hopped 2 inches. I slid off and hit the floor, palms scraping splinters. The smell was everywhere. Burnt plastic, spoiled food. Under it, a sweetness that had rotted into some other thing. It made my eyes water and my stomach climb into my throat. The marching was inside the room now. Not feet, not men. A line of pressure coming through step by step. I saw the wall behind the lady go crooked and then straight like a heat mirage. I looked past her by accident. There were shapes behind her. Not clean, not sharp. The suggestion of coats and rifles, hats like we don't wear now. Faces with no details, like you can tell where the eyes are supposed to be, but you wish you couldn't. They moved as one the way units move when nobody wants to be the first or the last. My head filled with a sound I can only call crying, but not like people cry. 1,000 little breaths pulled sharply through teeth. The building's wood made fits of noise, like it was choosing between cracking and holding. I dropped to my knees without meaning to. I heard myself start saying something like a prayer, and I do not pray. I don't even know what the words were. Maybe just sorry, 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 like a busted record. Whitaker tried to push forward. The radio fought him. Sparks bit. I saw an invisible hand take his chest and slam him against the wall. He hit not bone-breaking hard, but hard enough I felt it in my teeth. He slid down and sucked air like a man who just took a plunge in the cold water. The lady looked at Martinez. I swear she tilted her head like she picked him out. He braced like men do when they think it's about to hurt. "Don't," he said to her, like he could bargain. The glass in the window beside her crazed into spiderwebs and then fell out in a sheet that became diamonds on the floor. Wind bowled the room and papers lifted and spun. Letters from mothers and sisters and wives rose and slapped the ceiling and stuck there a second, then dropped like hurt birds. Everything went high and loud and then low and quiet. I blacked out, not like a movie, just a soft closing of a door. The last thing I heard was Martinez say, in a voice as small as a kid's, "I'm sorry, Alma. I did not know that name then. I learned it later." Morning came slow. The power was back. The wind had died. The river made a soft noise like a man sleeping. MPs found us in a mess. A dozen men on the floor or slumped against bunks. Cuts, bruises, no broken bones. No blood that wasn't from glass cuts. Lights blown, beds shifted. The duty log showed blank pages flapped by wind. They had medics check us. Pupils, vitals. Those little lights shine into your soul. We were shaken. We were alive. An officer came through the bay, a butter bar with a jaw he probably polished, and said words about accountability and discipline while keeping a careful distance from the cold spot by the door that hadn't warmed yet. The official line came by noon. The alarm panel had thrown a fault. A transformer had burped. Pressure change from the storm had slammed doors. Maybe there was gas. The MP said no gas. The report would say possible gas involvement anyway. Everyone nodded. We had our box. Top stood in front of us after chow and said, "This barracks has history. You will treat it with respect. You will not spread bullshit. You will not make trouble for yourselves by saying things that make other people feel unsafe." It was almost funny, that phrase, feel unsafe. We were soldiers who trained to walk into fire. But the words made sense. The wrong kind of story in a place like that could wreck a platoon. Martinez put in a transfer request the next day. He did not write a reason. He didn't have to. "You running?" I asked him, trying to sound like I wanted him to stay. "I'm moving," he said. "Running is different." He pulled a pack of smokes from his pocket and pressed it into my hand and said, "I ain't going to need these where I'm going." He meant it. He meant to stop. I don't know if he did. 2 weeks later, he was gone to another post. He didn't say goodbye to many. He shook Whitaker's hand and looked at me long, like a man who's trying to memorize a face he'll never see again. "Alma," he said once, low, while we waited for his truck, and he kind of smiled, the way people smile when they say a name they love and hate. I asked him about Alma. He told me, a girl from San Antonio. A bad year when he got back. A wedding they both called off. A miscarriage nobody saw. That name had teeth. It lived in him. I didn't know how the lady found it. Maybe she just had a nose for hurt. Me? I started writing. I did it quiet. I did it at night with the little desk light turned low. I wrote what happened in a green notebook they issued me at the schoolhouse and never asked back. I wrote dates, times, smells. Words I could not say to a person without sounding soft. Nobody wanted to hear. When I tried to talk to a buddy, he said, "Man, don't make it real." I shut up. I put it in the notebook and folded the pages like a map I didn't want to share. I stayed at Leavenworth less than a year after. I got an early out for reasons that looked clean on paper. I never once told the sergeant the truth when he asked if I planned to re-enlist. I said I hadn't decided. I had. I was done. I carried something from that hall that didn't fit under a ruck strap. Some nights I woke in a small apartment 2 states away and held my breath to listen if doors opened down a hall I no longer lived in. The night has weight now. Maybe it always did. I just didn't feel it until then. Whitaker stayed. Of course he stayed. The Army needs men like him. He moved to a different wing. That wasn't official. He just made it so by swapping rooms till the puzzle fit. He never slept in that hallway again. He said he had no reason to. That was the word he used. Reason. Like reason was a wire you could stretch across a door to keep things from coming in. Years slid. The smell of burnt plastic still makes me gag. I don't light candles for anyone. I don't stand near closed doors late at night. When my wife asks why years later, different life, I say the latches are old. She smiles and says, "I'm funny sometimes." I let her believe that. She never knew me at 19, jaw clenched, back against the barracks wall, watching a woman in black slide down a hall that wasn't supposed to have people in it. Every soldier has a story that walked home with him. Some tell it and it makes them feel better. Some never do. I thought mine would get lighter if I put it on paper. It didn't. It just got clearer. That's what I've got for you. The lines sharper than they were. In the 80s, after I'd made a go at civilian life and was back in Kansas for a job and some dumb idea that seeing places would make them smaller, I met a young sergeant at a bar not far from post. We swapped units like men do when we want to prove we speak the same language. He told me he was in the old barracks, second floor, east wing. I felt my mouth get dry. I asked how he liked the building. He laughed, a cheap kind of laugh made to hide a thought. He said, "Man, it's fine. Doors slam sometimes. Lights do that flicker bullshit. Some of the boys here marching at 3. The usual." "What about the lady?" I asked, like I had a right to ask. He looked at me, very still. "You in the army, or are you a reporter?" he asked. "Neither," I said. "Just someone who knows where the bodies sleep." He thought about that. He sipped his beer. "They say she's still around," he said finally, voice low. Same hallway. Black dress. Sometimes she looks wet, like she's been in the rain too long. He shrugged fast, embarrassed by the words. "You know how people talk, though." I nodded. I paid for his drink. I walked out into Kansas night air that smelled like the river and leaves in a storm that wouldn't come for days. I stood there a while and looked toward the dark line of trees near the rookery and felt a little pull in my chest like a hand on a sleeve. Not a bad pull. Not a good one. Just a reminder. I shook it off like a bug. I don't have a moral for you. I won't tell you to be brave or to pray or to keep your mouth shut. I'll tell you a thing I think is true. Places remember. They keep a list, even when we throw our copies away. Fort Leavenworth is that kind of place. It keeps the stack. It can put it in front of you when the night is right. So if you ever find yourself in a long hall there, doors shut, locks tight, air cold and sound thick, and you hear boots at 3 a.m., and you smell the sweet rot under the burn, don't be cute. Don't call out like you know what's coming. Stand steady, keep your hands open, let the past pass. That's all. That's what we did. It wasn't enough, and it was the only thing. Fort Leavenworth remembers. So that's the end of our video. If you made it this far, make sure to hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel, and it's free. And if you want more terrifying encounters like this one, check out the other videos on screen right now. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there. See you soon.